everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, the Workday Trust Program and Security and Privacy for Machine Learning. I'm Mary Pat Esposito, and here with me today is my co-Chief Trust Officer, Eileen Smith. I thought we'd start the webinar off with a little joke. What do you call an excavated pyramid? Unencrypted. Wait a minute for the laughter to subside. If you don't get that joke, you might be in the wrong webinar. Just kidding, but maybe. We hope that you're all doing well today and that you find this webinar informative. Today's webinar is part of our Looking Forward with Workday webinar series, designed to give you insight into how your organization can do more with Workday, including additional ways we support how you manage your people and your business. Our topics are focused on enabling an agile and digital enterprise, highlighting how Workday technology enables resilience as our customers respond to change. A few housekeeping things before we begin. You'll see there is a little widget bar, gray bar at the bottom of your screen. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop. There is a help widget all the way to the left of the gray bar. This is where you'll find resources and information if you're having technical issues with the webinar. The slide widget should be open already. You can expand your slides or maximize the full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. We won't be using the media player today. Since we do have quite a few attendees on today's session, attendees are muted, but we want to hear from you, so we encourage you to use the Q&A widget. That's the speech bubble with a question mark on it in the middle of the gray bar. We encourage you to submit questions during the webinar, and we'll try to answer them in today's session. But if they need a fuller answer or if we run out of time, we'll answer them later via email. Please know we capture every question. There's also a resource list in the upper right. You can find additional material related to Workday's Trust Program there. I'd also like to note that a recording of today's webinar will be available in approximately 24 hours and can be accessed using the same link you used to join this webinar today. And finally, there's one extra icon all the way to the right of the widget bar. It's the speech bubble with the lines. That's to complete a brief 3-question survey at the end of the webinar. That helps us bring topics to you that you want to hear more about and helps us improve the future webinars. We really encourage you to take a few minutes towards the end of today's webinar to provide the feedback. As you all know, Workday is continuously innovating, which drives continuous deployment. We may talk about future innovations today. If we do, please don't make purchasing decisions based on those futures. Okay, let's get started then. We have 2 main topics for today. I'll start the session by reviewing our trust program and notable enhancements made in the last year. Eileen will lead the discussion on machine learning and how Workday is addressing security and privacy for this area of innovation. We left some time at the end for Q&A. Anything we can't address today we'll provide in a follow-up Q&A attached to the recording. So without further ado, again, I'm Mary Pat Esposito, Chief Trust Officer of Workday. I'm coming to you today from Chicago, Illinois. I've been working at Workday for over 5 years and spent much of my career working in the highly risk-averse financial industry. The goal of Workday's Trust Program is to instill confidence and trust in Workday through open and transparent conversation. It's a framework designed to provide visibility into investments that Workday makes in protecting our customers' data. It encompasses all the investments Workday makes to protect the security and privacy of your data, including our investments in third-party audits and certifications that demonstrate the suitability and effectiveness of our security program to you, our customers. It includes our investment in top talent and our continuous investment in their career development and certifications. The economies of scale of a true SaaS offering can be seen in Workday's investment in industry-leading cybersecurity technologies like Splunk, Illumio, and CrowdStrike. Our people and technology come together through processes that are developed based on internationally recognized standards. In order to guide the development of our security program, we use both NIST cybersecurity framework and the CIS controls. NIST CSF provides us with a mechanism of measuring security program maturity using the Carnegie Mellon CMM across the 5 functional areas that comprise the framework. And we use the output of that process combined with our security risk management program and our organizational business goals to define a roadmap expressed in a series of projects to improve the maturity of the program over time. In that way, NIST CSF allows us to align the security program with business goals, prioritize resources, and support investment decisions. The CIS controls provide more tactical focus on technical guidance for the implementation of security measures, for instance, by using the security configuration baselines. We chose NIST CSF and CIS because they are internationally recognized framework and controls that offer high-level security guidance as well as tactical implementation guidance and support measurement and benchmarking. Implementation of both CSF and CIS provide us with a strong, sustainable foundation for our security program. Now, we don't have time today to review all of the aspects of our security program. Please see the latest SOC 2 for that. But let's look at some of the areas where Workday is making great strides to strengthen our security maturity. Our threat intelligence resources are strong subject matter experts with diverse backgrounds, and we are continually interacting and communicating with organizations like ISAC and other industry consortiums. Our Security Operations Center uses a well-informed use case development model, over 500 rules, or nearly 500 correlation rules in Splunk. We have 2 teams working on these rules. One team focuses on building new rules, and the other team is constantly refining the existing rules. Our Privacy, Ethics, and Compliance team has completed over 200 feature reviews, as well as privacy impact assessments on marketing and employee data as well. A very hard-working group within the Workday organization, making sure we're doing all the right things for our customers as well as our employees. We conduct periodic red, blue, and purple team exercises to test and continuously improve Workday's security detection and our playbooks that help guide our teams when called into action. Encryption and segregation are the cornerstones of protecting customer data. Customer data is encrypted in transit over the internet. It's encrypted at rest. We segregate the customer environment from our corporate environment, and we don't use customer data in development or QA. That's all fictitious data. Our incident response team works closely with stakeholders to assign roles and responsibilities, execute tabletop tests, and ensure our playbooks are on point. The incident response plan drives formal documentation of root cause analysis and lessons learned. Let's jump now to Let's shift our focus to third-party evidence. Our ISO certifications demonstrate that we are operating our security and privacy program to international best practices. Our security policies are based on and designed to meet the controls necessary for ISO certification. So as many of you know, Workday is ISO 27001 certified, the most widely adopted information security management system. We supplement that with ISO 27017. This adds a cloud aspect to the information security controls, in essence, raising 27001 framework into the modern age of cloud services. ISO 27018 adds a set of privacy controls specific to personally identifiable information. And our newest certification is 27701. 27701 is to privacy what 27001 is to security. So it is a privacy information management guidance. That's our most recent ISO certification. These are 3-year certifications, and we do annual surveillance audits on all the ISO certifications. Workday SOC reports play a very important role in our security program because they represent our contractual commitment to not materially diminish the protections provided by those controls established in the SOC 2. This model allows us to continually update our security controls while giving customers confidence that there's a security baseline that they can continue to rely on and that is independently audited. The results of those are available to you on the Customer Center portal, and they provide ongoing visibility into the operating effectiveness of our control environment over time. The SOC 1 is done semi-annually every 6 months. The scope is the production environment. The SOC 2 is executed on an annual basis. That is on all environments containing customer data. And we uptake all 5 trust principles for the core service for our SOC 2. The SOC 2 is a SOC 2 Plus because our auditors review and opine on additional material within our SOC report. That additional material is a mapping to the NIST cybersecurity framework, to our mapping our controls to NIST 800-171. That is for controlled unclassified information like security clearances. And then we also map our controls to GDPR articles so that we can support your need to present to your regulator or your data oversight committee that your subprocessor is meeting GDPR requirements as a subprocessor. Now, Workday has grown through acquisition, and as we bring these companies on board Workday, we continue to increase their security maturity as well. You can see our oldest acquisition is Adaptive, and Adaptive now has the 3 ISO certifications, SOC 1 and SOC 2. Scout, a more recent acquisition, currently has a SOC 2, and we'll be working with that team to increase their security maturity as well. NCC Group is an industry-leading information assurance firm. We engage them to do application-level security vulnerability assessments prior to each feature release. They also perform our network and system independent penetration tests. These tests are available to you on the Customer Center portal. When we work with NCC Group, they execute their testing, present their results. We remediate, they retest, and then they present their findings of the retest in the independent security report. So you have NCC Group's assessment of the code. We also have a bug bounty program working with HackerOne, getting our code in front of over 300 ethical hackers and researchers. So we don't make that information available to customers, but it is part of our vulnerability assessments that we do against the code. Data privacy is paramount to Workday, which is why we are one of the first companies to adhere to the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, further proof of our commitment to continuing to be compliant with global data privacy protections. We value the leadership the EU Cloud Code of Conduct General Assembly has provided, and their efforts to ensure that enterprise cloud service providers continue to uphold the highest standard of data protection. Now, when we started back in 2005, public cloud providers were not readily available for enterprise applications. So we needed to build out our dream in our own infrastructure in co-location data centers. But within a couple of years, public cloud options became more common. And in the early days, we took advantage of AWS for development and testing. This offered some cost efficiency, but what was more important to us was to develop expertise in the public cloud technology and participate in the maturing of this multi-cloud architecture space. We see it as critical to having deep expertise in all these technologies, and we feel the need to leverage the investments that these cloud providers are making. We've used these technologies for 10 years, and it's resulted in some really great in-house expertise. Today, the majority of our customers are deployed in Workday data centers. However, we do use a hybrid model. We use our data centers for the core of our application, along with public cloud for components where we don't gain differentiation by building in our own data center. Why reinvent the wheel? For example, learning media content is stored in AWS because AWS provides exceptional transcoding service and transcribing services that we would have recreated from scratch, and it just didn't make sense. The core Workday application is also available in AWS to enable deployment outside the scope of our data centers. So we've offered this to help solve data sovereignty issues with specific organizations. And we leverage the public cloud extensively for development and testing. So this is how we see the future of multi-cloud. A multi-cloud architecture that avoids vendor lock-in and technology limitations while helping us solve data sovereignty requirements. We are investing in cloud abstraction and preparing for a cloud-agnostic future. Having a deployment pipeline that is extensively automated with Docker and Kubernetes container management, and developing our infrastructure as a code. Workday is not a public cloud provider, and therefore we need to leverage the investments being made by these public cloud providers. That wraps up my portion of the presentation today. The purpose, the reason the Trust Office was put in place was to satisfy your third-party vendor risk assessment needs. Because of the model that we operate on, everyone on the same infrastructure, everyone on the same version, every risk assessment is done against the same application and the same infrastructure, and that truly makes us better together from a security and privacy perspective. Now I'd like to hand it off to Eileen.
Thank you, Mary Pat, for that wonderful overview. My name is Eileen Smith, and like Mary Pat, I'm a member of Workday's Global Trust team. I've been with Workday almost 10 years now, and most recently been focusing on security and privacy for Workday's machine learning and innovation services products. And I'm delighted to join you today from Workday's New York City offices in the Empire State Building. So for our presentation, we'll spend some time talking a little bit about some of the challenges and how Workday has gone about solving them for machine learning. In our consumer lives, we've all benefited from machine learning applications. If we take a look at Amazon and Netflix, for example, they've been serving us machine learning built recommendations for more than 20 years. Most of us are using voice assistants on our phones or on personal devices at home like Google Home or Alexa. But in the offices or at work, we've had less opportunities to take advantage of machine learning. We might be using machine learning recommendations for email response or for distribution list suggestions. But overall, the adoption of machine learning in the enterprise has been much slower, particularly for applications like human resources and financials. So let's talk a little bit about why that's occurring. One benefit of the 20-year head start in consumer machine learning is there is a large amount of technical research that also looks at some of the challenges in bringing machine learning applications to market. And we can review that literature to help us understand some of the obstacles for bringing machine learning to the enterprise. So data scientists get stuck before they even begin. It's surprisingly difficult in a large production environment to understand what data exists, how they are structured, and how they relate to each other. This particular quote is from a technical paper written by a university professor who took a 2-year sabbatical from his academic life to work at a consumer internet company. He built machine learning services and infrastructure to support recommendations for user content and search. And he was writing this paper for both business practitioners as well as academics. And so as this quote shows, he identified that there was a major challenge in collecting and actually understanding data sufficiently to build machine learning models. He also recognized there is a need to build plumbing to integrate various components into production workflows. And then the graph on the right tells a similar story. This is from another technical paper, this time by data scientists at Google. And they were interested in analyzing the cost in real-world machine learning systems, understanding where is the technical debt to build these types of applications. And the quote at the bottom is from this paper. Only a small fraction of real-world ML systems is composed of the machine learning code. The required surrounding infrastructure is vast and complex. And so the boxes, the relative size of the boxes indicate some of the cost and the effort for those different components. And so you'll notice the large green boxes on the left side for data collection and verification. No one can build machine learning applications without high quality data. You'll also notice a large box for feature extraction. This refers to the process of transforming raw data into features that better represent the underlying problems to the machine learning models. And most machine learning experts will describe feature extraction as among the most difficult and the most time-consuming task and requires expert knowledge, both technical and business. And then you'll notice the boxes, the gray boxes on the right side of the slide. These represent the cost and the effort to actually deploy machine learning models to production environments, to ensure optimal performance for the end users, and to monitor the behavior of these applications. And then the very small blue box in the middle represents the actual ML coding. We may think initially that building the models is the hard part. In the real world, it's actually the smallest part of the actual challenge. So in order to bring machine learning to the enterprise, we do have to solve for all of these components. So let's talk a little now about how Workday has gone about solving those problems. So we believe that these problems cannot be solved without collaboration between Workday as a SaaS vendor and you, our customer. And so we looked at 4 critical areas, particularly that require collaboration between us and our customers. So the first is in the area of domain knowledge. So we talked about those findings from those technical papers that looked at the effort to understand data sources, to handle feature extraction. That cannot be done without very deep knowledge of the business problems that need to be solved for that particular machine learning application. So we are 100% focused on building machine learning solutions that enhance our software as a service offerings for human resources and financial services. We have deep expertise within our product management organization, and then we collaborate with our customers and with industry partners to prioritize which problems would most benefit from machine learning enhancements. The next area is in the realm of security practices. So we spent the first half of our presentation reviewing with Mary Pat the deep investments Workday has made in security controls, privacy practices, rigorous audits, and third-party certifications. Very focused specifically on HR and core financial data. So we wanted to bring those practices to machine learning. Building machine learning for these types of data elements could be very risky for organizations. So we wanted to bring our deep expertise in privacy and security in building these products, and also getting feedback from customers on how we do this. And then in the area of platforms and tools, we talked with Mary Pat about how Workday is moving to a multi-cloud provider, taking advantage of both our private and our public clouds, choosing the right architecture to solve the right problem. And she gave some examples, for illustration, where we take advantage of AWS public cloud to solve new problems like video storage, transcoding, and transcription. Well, it turns out public clouds are also offer many enhancements in the area of machine learning to solve different types of problems. And what we've always done at Workday is insulate our customers from changes in operating systems, from changes in databases. And in a similar way, we want to protect our customers from changes in machine learning technology, that as a SaaS user and customer, that you can take advantage of these capabilities without having to invest in learning the underlying technology or sorting complex or expensive updates or enhancements. And then finally, data. So we saw from the researchers, both at Google and from the university professor, that the effort to collect data and to verify that data is quite extensive. And we recognize that individual customers may not have sufficient volumes of data themselves to train a model, or they may not want to take years in order to invest in collecting data to build models that may or may not actually work in production. So it was important for us to also come up with a secure and transparent mechanism where customers can contribute data for building and training models. And the next couple of slides, we'll talk about each of these in a little more detail, but these are the 4 high-level themes that we want to cover in our approach to building and predicting data for machine learning. So let's drill a little bit more into the area of domain knowledge. One of the things that we are very selective about are the actual use cases that we choose. So it's important for us as an organization to use machine learning in ways that are ethical and also that solve real and practical business problems for you, our customers. And so there are roughly 3 categories of problems that we're focused on today for machine learning. So the first is in the area of augmentation. We know today that HR and financial applications collect and generate large volumes of data. And in some cases, there are business processes that are time sensitive and that are business critical, such as closing financial period or completing a payroll that do require your users, your most experienced users, to look for certain types of anomalies in that data. So this might be anomalies in financial journal transactions or anomalies in submitted time cards that are relevant to payroll processing. And the end users who have to support this task are often under pressure to do this in a very short amount of time so that you can meet various types of business objectives. So we recognize opportunities to use machine learning to actually better detect anomalies in each customer's own data and surface those anomalous transactions to your most experienced users so that they can find them more quickly, that they can investigate, resolve them, and complete the business task that is necessary, whether it's closing the financial period or completing the payroll cycle. We also realize that in addition to surfacing transactions that seem to be anomalous based on patterns that were learned from your specific tenant's data, that we may also be able to recommend certain types of actions to help the user identify how that transaction might need to be corrected. Another use case or types of scenarios that we look at are in the area of acceleration. We recognize that there are certain types of important but honestly tedious tasks that need to be done to support HR or financial applications. These can include transcoding or transcribing supplier invoices or submitting expense reports. And so we recognize the opportunity to use optical character recognition to be able to scan documents like receipts and invoices in order to automatically generate the data for the actual system. And so again, we don't eliminate the human from the process, but we can streamline the task, generate the text, give that end user a chance to review the text, make corrections before they actually submit it. And then the third category of scenarios that we look at are the area of assistance. And these are really for your everyday end users. These may be users who don't log into the Workday application on a basis. They may need to complete a complex task on an infrequent basis. For example, I've been at Workday a long time. Can I remember exactly where I go to change my direct deposit? Maybe I don't remember the exact task or flow for that. But now we can use natural language processing in order to support a chat-based session where I can ask the Workday application, how do I change my direct deposit information? And the chatbot can navigate me to that task. Or we might use the chatbot in order to be able to walk the user through certain types of data collection, like submitting a time off request, where the chatbot asks questions, I put in my dates, it verifies it, it submits the transaction for me. Another example might be helping users grow their own career within your organization and help them better match their skills and their interests to jobs that might be open in your organization in ways that with them just doing simple text searching, they might not be able to find. So again, this is a high-level summary of some of the areas that we look at when we build machine learning examples. And this focus on domain knowledge, working closely with customers and our product managers to identify real-world problems that are useful for organizations to solve, and how an end user might want to interact with that type of machine learning scenario is very important to our delivery model. And then if we wanted to drill further into the privacy theme, we recognize there are new challenges in privacy when we bring machine learning applications to the market. This is an area that is undergoing increasing scrutiny, and there may be additional regulatory requirements that come into play. So again, we've taken that approach that we've had with Workday, just as we build HR and financial features that look at the overall regulatory frameworks in which our customers work, to also bring that privacy by design approach to our development process for machine learning. And so our approach today is very collaborative. We go through a shared value framework as a part of our internal development process. This process is deliberately sequential. And so we include stakeholders at each of these different phases to make sure that the use cases provide value. And so early in the process, our data scientists, our machine learning product managers may suggest ideas. They will propose that to our applications team, our privacy team, where we'll talk through what could be the potential ethical risk of building such a feature. Think through what type of data might be necessary in order to build that application. And only if we successfully answer those questions and get comfort from those different stakeholders do we move on to the next stage in the shared value framework, which is exploration. So actually start thinking about then testing the thesis for the data that our data scientists thought would be necessary for building those models. Is it correct? Can we do the right feature extraction? Are we getting the types of results that we would actually expect? Again, we have a go, no-go phase before we move on to the actual design assessment, thinking about how would we build such a feature? What type of technology do we need to use to build it? Is it something that we would run in our co-location data center? Would we use components in public cloud? We would work closely here with potentially customers as a part of our design framework to validate that the design is appropriate and working as customers would expect. And if it passes those gates, then we can create a product that would be with feedback from our data scientists, our system engineers, make sure that this is a product or a feature that is usable for multiple customers and that we can continue to support it and maintain it consistent with the SLA and customer expectations. And then we saw from some of the researchers the importance of data in building these types of applications. So you may be thinking to yourself, where does Workday actually get data to build machine learning applications? And so we have a couple of data sources that we rely on. In some cases, we can use various types of public and third-party data, like Common Crawl or ONET could be used to help us train certain types of models. So much like today, how we have a review process for open source code or any types of components that we use in our environment, if we're using public or third-party data, that has to go through a review process at Workday to ensure the source of the data is reliable and that we have all necessary permissions in order to use it to train models in our environment. Sometimes data sets are actually owned by Workday. So we acquired, for example, a large data set when we acquired a company called Identify. And their data sets were the basis of our Workday graph, the set of skills and relationships between skills today that powers features like our Skills Cloud. So we may have other data sets that are either owned or built by Workday or companies that we acquire. And then as a part of our design partnership program, early adopters or design partners may contribute certain types of data sets to solve those types of scenarios. But the primary contributions for data come through something called our innovation services. So we realize in order to build models, to continue to fine-tune models, that we would need a process that would allow customers to securely and seamlessly contribute data directly from their tenant for machine learning purposes. So we created a framework called Innovation Services to be able to support data contributions for different types of use cases. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail in the next couple of slides. So now how do we pull it all together? We looked at some of the diagrams at the beginning of the presentation. It's not just a matter of building machine learning models. We have to build and maintain all of this infrastructure around those models. We have to do it in a way that supports our core business of delivering feature-rich software as a service application that are held to a very rigorous SLA. So let's talk about how our approach to supporting that. So if we think about today, your core applications, as we talked about with Mary Pat may be running. Most of you are probably in a co-location data center. Some of you may be hosted today in AWS. Your end users are accessing and interacting with the Workday application via a client, an industry standard browser, or a native Workday application on Android or iOS. And that application is responsible for calculating payroll, calculating financials, securely storing your data at rest, ensuring that data is encrypted, and then supporting any various types of integration flows that you might have. So how does the architecture need to change to expand to support machine learning? Well, we needed to create an additional layer that we refer to as the inference services. So inference services are the components that we need at runtime in order to be able to make a prediction to a user based on certain transaction that they're running. So maybe it's the chatbot where I'm interacting with to submit my time off. Or maybe it's recommendations on those journal anomalies. So how do we make those types of inferences? So the important thing for us is that the end users are interacting with that in the same user interface. They don't move to another application. The Workday application services on the back end is responsible for communicating with the inference services layer, passing in whatever data is necessary at runtime, and then getting the recommendation back. And so if we use some of the diagrams that we looked at the beginning of our presentation, we can see here that the machine learning code, of course, the models are hosted here. As a part of the SaaS, as a SaaS vendor, we're also responsible for the service infrastructure, for the monitoring, for the machine resource management. So today, depending on what the feature is, we may use our co-location environment to host inferencing. For other features, we may use components that are hosted in public cloud. But again, the same security framework, same security commitments are in place for that. And then the next element that we need to address is how do we actually build those particular models? So what's the mechanism for determining what is the right model to build? How do we evaluate which techniques are appropriate for different types of business problems? So we created a machine learning development services environment to be able to support these types of processes. So today, this environment is restricted to a limited set of Workday data scientists to be able to support this type of work. And so this component is used for offline or static training of machine learning models. And there's a couple of key components that we would support here. So one is the data contribution. So again, we saw all the research. The critical factor in building good models is having high quality data and being able to keep that data up to date to be able to do the data verification and the feature extraction. So we built services that are in the tenant that allow data contributions based on customer configuration to the machine learning development environment. And so that's done securely over private networks to specialized environments to support it. And we follow our similar practices on encrypting, for example, data at rest. And these data contributions are short-lived. We're not creating permanent copies of data. We're using the data contributions to do training for particular models. And so today we keep a data contribution for 30 days or less. And the data contributions are based on features that each customer has chosen to enable and configurations for that particular feature for data contributions. And then in this development environment, we're also handling some of those other problems that the researchers had pointed out for us. So the configuration of models, the data verification, the feature extraction, our data scientists are able to do that work here in the machine learning development environment. They're able to build new models in this environment, and they're able to do validation and analysis of those models. And if that model meets our quality assurance and approval process, then we have processes that also allow us now to move this model into the production environment. So as a part, for example, as a part of our weekly service updates, in addition to introducing new code and new features in the application service, we can also publish new models to that runtime environment. So as the models get better over time, the application can automatically handle that. And again, we're using the same SaaS framework in order to eliminate the need for your organization to have to manage that process. So these are some of the key things that we were focusing on when we built our machine learning applications. So as a part of our trusted partnership with you, we also want to be very transparent about innovation services and features that require data contributions or use data in order to make an inference or prediction. So we've created something called our Innovation Services Framework, which is a set of consistent terms that describe data that could be contributed for the purposes of building machine learning models or other types of features that use data aggregation like benchmarking. So we give customers very consistent terms that explain and make it very clear that you own the data that you contribute, to explain how Workday can use that data contribution in order to build results or features that benefit you, the customer. Give you the opportunity, make it very clear that you can always choose to opt out and data contributions will be deleted. So that's, and by having an innovation services order form, it just needs to be executed once. It does not need to be, you don't need to contract for each individual feature. We've created the terms so that they're consistent and we can bring out new features that correspond to that order form. And then each individual feature will also have something that's known as a service description that we publish on Community that will give you more details about the purpose of that particular feature, like Assistant, what type of data it uses, what regions does it perform processing in, for example, and whether or not that feature has been included in the most recent SOC reports from an independent perspective. And then you, the customer, always have the ability to control when these features are turned on. So just like today, as Workday comes out with new features, we deliver them automatically to your tenant, but you as an organization determine when you turn on those features and when you use them. And so we've developed a very similar framework for features that use machine learning. Although we are delivering underlying capabilities in the product, customers have to first agree to the innovation services and then explicitly opt in and say, yes, this is a feature I want to use. And then we'll document for each individual feature if there's some type of data contribution that's required in order for us to build or validate the model is appropriate for your tenant. That's clearly specified in the documentation. And then you can use the tenant configuration screens to record your opt-in and the data configuration set. And just like any other type of configuration in the Workday tenant, that's also captured in the audit trail. You as an organization will control who is allowed to turn on those features and configure data contribution. And then for each of the features, then we also provide formal documentation on the community site. And we also support various types of tools within the tenant, for example, so that you can run reports to look at the fields, for example, that might be used in data contribution, or to monitor when Workday is running data contribution jobs, the number of rows, for example, that was contributed as a part of that particular feature. So again, important for us to be transparent about how these features work and to give you very robust security terms for the data that you share and our obligations to protect that data, including personal data if you choose to share certain types of personal data with us for training models. So to sum up, machine learning is an exciting new area for enterprise applications, but it does bring some new challenges. We think we're well suited in our partnership with you, our customers, our shared domain knowledge and how we build these types of features to make sure that they're useful to your organization and ethical for the users who interact with the features, to bring the very robust security and privacy practices that we talked about with Mary Pat for the core products to our machine learning features as well. And then to use our SaaS frameworks in order to bring you the best technology to deliver these capabilities, but protect you from changes in architecture trends over time so that you can take advantage of these features right away without significant investments in additional hardware or skill sets in order to build these types of tools for yourself. And then flexibility in data, recognizing that customers may choose to collaborate to build global models or use features that have models that are trained specific for your organization, but to make sure that that process is seamless, minimizes the number of places where data needs to be moved out of your tenant, can be managed very securely within the Workday ecosystem using a combination of our existing co-location data centers or public cloud, but with the same robust, very strict security terms to be able to protect that data and honor our obligations to you, our customer. So that covers the key elements that we wanted to cover for machine learning and our approaches to security and privacy for machine learning. We'll go ahead now and open it up for Q&A. Take a look. Looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat. So we have a question about, is company data used within the development environment anonymized? So when customers contribute data, the data contribution is specific to a particular feature. And sometimes we can anonymize data before it's contributed, but most of the time the anonymization is done as a part of the tools within our machine learning development services. So for example, when we train a chatbot, the questions that users submit to the chatbot will be submitted to our machine learning development environment. And then we use automated tools to analyze those questions, remove things that looks like it's a person's name or something that is specific to your organization, so that we're just left with the structure of the sentence, understanding what the intent of that question is. And then our data scientists would only look at that anonymized or question text, for example. So if we have data that we think could uniquely identify an organization or a person, we do have tools that allow us to scrub that data in order to, before we use it to build models that might be used for other customers. And then we also make it very clear that our data protection terms, our data processing exhibit, for example, also applies to data contributions that are made to that environment. So to the extent that an organization or a person could be identified, we have obligations to protect that data, and any results that we generate from that cannot be used to identify a particular individual or person. And so for each feature, there's too many features now to cover them all in the half an hour that we have. We'll also make clear, as a part of that feature, what is the minimum set of data that needs to be contributed in order to train a model. And many features do not require very sensitive data to be contributed. We also want to minimize and be very careful about the data that we ask for in order to train a model. And then the next question is, how do you handle the data obfuscation and attribution to customers? So we do have identifiers when you make a data contribution. Because that data contribution is still owned by you, we have to still follow your instructions if you ask us to delete it. We do have an identifier that we can use to say this set of data belongs to customer X so that it can be removed if you choose not to continue to use that feature or you choose to opt out. But then we use tools within the machine learning development environment to aggregate data, to do data obfuscation. Again, it depends on the type of data that we use, but we use automated tools in that machine learning development services in order to scrub that data through the data verification and feature extraction process. Right, and then Mary Pat, we have a question about a reminder for how do organizations get a copy of the current SOC reports and test results that you described?
Absolutely.
Would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Current customers can have a named support contact, log into the customer center, click on the content link to get the SOC 1 report, SOC 2 report, the NCC group, independent security reports are all there on your customer center portal.
Thank you, Mary Pat. All right, in the last 3 or 4 minutes, any other questions before we wrap? Okay, looks like we've completed the Q&A portion. We just wanted to remind you of some of the other sessions that are coming up in our Looking Forward series. The next session will be on August 31st. We're delighted to have a customer present. Thomson Reuters will be presenting on diversity and inclusion on the journey with self-identification. So we're excited about that session and encourage you to join. We're also showing you the list of other sessions that are coming up for scenario planning, for planning, using Workday Extend and digital workspaces are several of the sessions that are upcoming. And we'll also be using the survey at the end of the session. If you have other topics that you would be interested in learning about or have covered as a part of this session, we would be delighted to have your feedback. And at that, I think we've closed out all the Q&A. We're so delighted that you were able to join us today. We hope the session was helpful for you, and we look forward to seeing you all again in the next Looking Forward session.
Thank you.